So for me, when the pandemic happened, my company, like everyone else's, went through a tough time, still going through a tough time. But for me, I was like, okay, how can I pivot? How can I pivot to address this unusual time that the whole world is facing? We're all in it together. It's a shared human experience. Doesn't matter whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether whatever, it's everyone is facing the same thing. So Virtual Bhutan purely started out of that, my own kind of started out of that compulsion for me to kind of innovate and see, okay, how do I still stay relevant in this tourism space and in this impact journey space? And how it's going, baby steps.
Welcome to Breaking Silos Collective, the show where we inform you how to break silos and why it actually matters. My name is Doris Carini. I'm the co-host of today's show, and I'm also the Europe ambassador of the East-West Center Hawaii, their experiential professional development program. This episode is produced in collaboration with the East-West Center, and we are interviewing their 2021 Innovation for Sustainable Development Fellows. Today I have on the show Mrs. Thinley Choden from Bhutan, and she's one of those 15 fellows who's going to talk about her innovative project in tourism. Her goal was to turn tourism into a virtual reality experience to overcome the travel restrictions due to the pandemic. A little bit about Thinley. She is a social entrepreneur. She is also the CEO and founder of Bhutan Tours and Travels. And Thinley is also the founder of Read Bhutan and the co-founder of Impact Bhutan. Thinley has gotten a numerous global prestigious and competitive programs that she's been involved with, namely the East-West Center Innovation for Sustainable Development program, which we are hosting this show with, but she's also the Acumen Global Fellow of 2016 and 2017, and she's part of the Vital Voices Grow Women Entrepreneurship program, as well as many, many others. Thinley has a executive certificate in strategic decision-making from Wharton Business School, and she holds an MPA and a certificate on disaster management and humanitarian assistance from the University of Hawaii. I'm very happy to have Thinley on the show today and would like to hand it over to you, Thinley. I've said a lot, but I really want to learn from you now. Can you tell us a little bit more about your business and what the current situation is like in terms of tourism and, of course, in relation to the pandemic?
Thank you, Doris. And thank you, the East-West Center. I'm very honored and happy to be here and to be part of the Sustainable Innovation Fellows 2021. So as Doris said, I am based here in Thimphu, Bhutan, and my business is, one of my businesses is an impact tourism company called Bhutan Tours and Travels. And with the pandemic, like everywhere in Bhutan as well, tourism industry has basically come to a halt since March 2020. That's when we had a first positive case. And ironically, it was a tourist who had the first positive case. And since then, tourism has pretty much come to a halt, and we've had no visitors, tourist visitors, since 2020. So in terms of the tourism sector and the impact the pandemic has had on our tourism business is quite large and negatively impact because tourism employs about in terms of numbers is about 50,000 people. So it's about 16% of the population that is employed by tourism sector. And we've had tourism is also one of the biggest hard currency or foreign currency earner for the economy. So since the pandemic, with no tourists coming in, so that's a huge loss as well for our economy. So in terms of the impact it has had on our economy, especially the tourism ecosystem, it's quite bad, because it's just not us, the tour companies. It's also the whole vertical, the whole vertical of the industry, the hotel owners, the restaurant owners, the handicraft shops, the community-based tourism groups. So it impacts a lot of business owners and employment and livelihood of people. But in terms of just how our country has handled the pandemic as from a public health perspective, I should say we are very lucky that way. We have a leadership that has, been very science-based and very proactive and very um, planned out in terms of taking this pandemic seriously from the get-go. At the epitome of it, our king, His Majesty, he's a king. He's been born into privilege, but he didn't sit in his palace and didn't sit on his throne. He was what I call the frontline king since the pandemic started. He's been constantly going out into the high-risk areas, and that's mostly the southern part, our border with India, where we had the most positive number of cases since the pandemic has been impacting the country. And His Majesty has visited every part of the country and, kind of put his foot there and given moral inspiration, moral leadership, responsible leadership, showing up and doing things. And our Prime Minister and his government has also been very equally excellent in terms of how they have handled the pandemic. So what has it resulted into is currently, in terms of numbers, Bhutan overall, we have only had about 2,590 some positive cases, 3 deaths, and we have 1 positive case right now. So everyone has pretty much recovered, and only 3 deaths so far. And in the last 33 days, we have not had any positive cases. So, in terms of just how, compared to other parts of the world, and even just the immediate neighborhood, India was going through a very tough phase with the Delta variant in the second wave. So we're very lucky that we've had kind of in that whole chaotic thing that our leadership has been very, very proactive, very science-based, and very practical. But having said that, I should also say our population in general, our people, and just our culture of how we think of the collective good versus a very individualistic approach towards a convenient interpretation of individualism that you see a lot of things happening around in the world. So it's a combination of all of that. So in terms of the pandemic, I would say public health wise, we are very lucky that we've had very minimal impact that way, and we're able to still have some sort of our lifestyle still functional. But in terms of the impact it's had on the economy and moving forward, I think it will be quite big, especially because we are a landlocked country and we quite dependent upon a lot of imports, especially from India. So I think the days ahead will probably be quite hard from an economic and livelihood perspective.
Thank you, Thinley, for giving us some background information on that. What comes to my mind when you speak about that collective approach that you mentioned your society has, Bhutan is really known for the gross national happiness index. Would you be able to speak a little bit to that? Does that relate to how you handle the pandemic and how you as an industry in tourism try to approach this crisis? Or does that figure not play an important role in your work?
No, I think the gross national happiness, I think it plays a huge role. And even the genesis of gross national happiness was based on our culture, right? We are a culture that is highly influenced by Buddhist values. So, and we've been very lucky that we have never been colonized. So therefore we didn't have baggages that a lot of the countries face in terms of indigenizing a lot of things you want to do and making your own choices. So we were lucky that we never were colonized, but we were even more lucky that we had kings who were very farsighted, and who are very selfless leaders, and who are very things for the well-being of the people and the country. So in the in the 70s, early 80s, His Majesty, the fourth king, which is the father of our current king, decided that Bhutan will follow the gross national happiness concept as the guiding philosophy, which essentially means economic growth is not the only and the ultimate goal for progress. So rather, we will pursue, or we will be guided by the gross national happiness philosophy, which essentially is an alternative or a holistic approach towards growth, and we look. It's essentially 4 pillars. Good governance is one of it. Second one is preservation and promotion of culture and spirituality. The third one is socioeconomic development, and the fourth one, obviously, is conservation of our environment. So any decision that a country or that a state makes, it's screened through a GNH screening lens, or a GNH screening process. And every 5 years, there's a GNH survey where then the outcome is the GNH index to see how well we are doing. But I would also like to caution, I think because Bhutan is known as the country of gross national happiness, a lot of people say, oh, you Bhutanese are the happiest people. But I think people are kind of misunderstand that. I think when we pursue GNH, doesn't mean that our country, everyone is happy and everyone shouldn't be anything but happy. I think that's a very unrealistic expectation. I think what GNH is that we are our guiding philosophy. We are the country is creating this enabling environment for individuals to pursue their happiness. Doesn't mean we don't have our own set of challenges, doesn't mean we don't have issues like any other society does. But the thing is that we as collective, as a Bhutanese community and Bhutanese population, we are guided by these philosophies and we work towards that. And I think it has played a huge impact also in terms of how we have handled the pandemic. Like I said, GNH is nothing foreign in terms of our values, in terms of our cultural heritage. GNH was in fact born out of that. When Bhutan was started on the process of modernization, we had to kind of articulate ourselves as a nation that is part of a global family of nations. Kind of, we have to articulate who we are and what we stand for and what we would like to be guided with moving forward. So yeah, GNH is pretty much part of what the Bhutanese population, what we aspire, how we live every day, whether we are conscious of it or not.
Great. So it makes sense how you described it to us. And you said it's just the goal that you want to achieve as a collective society, and you follow those values. Can you explain to us a little bit how that looks for your business, Bhutan Tours and Travels? How do you try to bring these values into your business to achieve actually ecotourism in your country?
Yeah, so the tourism policy of Bhutan to begin with. So for me to design my company as an impact travel company, I would say it wasn't necessarily very difficult, because I had a very good starting point in the sense that our country's tourism policy is a very from a policy perspective, is a very far-sighted and sustainable policy that has been crafted and is being implemented since tourism started here in Bhutan. And it's what we call high impact, low volume. And it is pretty much structured around cost, which then controls the number, but brings in is able to give the authentic experience a visitor is looking for. At the same time, it kind of protects our local culture and a local a local culture in terms of not being very overwhelmed with the number of visitors that may pour into if we have a very open and free door in terms of tourism policy, which is what is being practiced even within our region where we are, where Bhutan is situated. So having said that, my tourism company, I say it's a travel with a purpose, or travel for a purpose. So rather than just travel for tourism consumption or tourism experience, you go to Bhutan. Okay, you know of a culture. You learn of how we are very uniquely different, and experience what it has to offer. But at the same time, kind of designed around certain issues that you're passionate about, whether it's education, whether it's environmental conservation, whether it is women's empowerment or service, community service. So designing the journeys around certain themes and issues that people are passionate about. So adding a layer to it for more than just being a pure tourism experience. But GNH, it's influencing. I think it influences every Bhutanese, how we think, how we do, and even the decisions we make. Like I said earlier, whether we are conscious of it or not. But for me, GNH provided the perfect platform in terms of articulating what I would like, or designing what I would like my travel company to aspire to, or what I would like my travel companies to be known for, and how I design these experiences and journeys, and how I collaborate with partners who are aligned with similar values.
Mm-hmm. That actually brings me to one of the questions of your co-fellows from the program. Trisha, for example, from the Philippines, she asked, what are best practices of ecotourism that come out of Bhutan? And I would name your business as one of those. But who are other players that you would say these are really good best practices that we could look to for sustainable ecotourism?
Yeah, so I think, specifically, and I may be repeating some of these things, but specifically answering to that question, I think we have a policy environment that enables sustainable tourism to begin with, right? And in terms of ecotourism and community-based tourism, the Ministry of the Tourism Council of Bhutan and the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, they work a lot together to make sure that the benefits of it certain benefits of it go to the community groups, or whether if it's the national parks that we enter, it goes there. Because if you go trekking, then we have to seek permit or get permit from the national parks to trek through that, and also there are we can't leave any garbage behind. We have to, so there is a checkpoint when you come out of the trekking. There'll be forest officials and forest rangers there checking if we have brought back our garbage with us. So I think, in terms of just sustainable tourism, we started with that. So it's only the challenge we pose ourselves is how much higher can we go? How can we challenge ourselves to be better, sustainable, better at that, better at this? And in terms of, the other actors who are in this space who are doing very similar things, I think I am a very small travel company. I try and focus more on quality than quantity. And that's not to say that quantity over quality is any bad or anything. It just depends upon what a business philosophy and approach is. But there are other travel companies like Youngfell, like Bhutan Tours and Bhutan Tourism Corporation of Bhutan. So they are, me naming names wouldn't necessarily make sense, but there are travel companies who have kind of done these things. And the good thing about tourism sector that some may, I think is a good thing, is that the entry point is very low. So there's no, anyone can, as long as anyone can open and become a tour company. Now, there are some who say, okay, we need to have certain standards because that dilutes who we stand for. Because if anyone can become a tour company, then that kind of brings down the quality or the exclusivity of it. But my approach to that is, that doesn't bring down our quality or who we stand for. Rather, we have this open platform, and anyhow, the ones who will succeed and the ones who will remain after 3 or 4 years, and the ones who started off, just because they think they can do it, will not be able to sustain anyways, and they will eventually kind of go out of business in 2, 3, 4 years time. So the ones who are consistently and be resilient and kind of innovate and invest will somehow see themselves through. But keeping it open and making every individual be able to open a tour company and operate, I feel like that's a good principle to function off of. And actually, that's how Bhutan functions, because I think currently we have, I think, about 4,500 registered tour companies. But then in terms of the ones who are active and who bring in the most number of visitors and all, it's probably only 10% of that, or even less. So yeah, so it's like some are for it, some are against it, some it has its pros and cons. Yeah.
But it's like a self-regulating system, as you described it, with those values that you have in place, and those who follow them will continue to succeed.
Yeah.
You spoke about innovation, Thinley, and that's also what we are very curious about to learn from you, because during the pandemic, you expanded your business to virtual reality. Can you tell us a little bit more how that works, where you are, what challenges you faced, and how we can experience?
This is, I mean, if you innovation is talked about a lot, but if you think about what does innovation mean, right? Innovation is responding to a problem that you face, and how can you overcome that by thinking outside the box, I suppose. So this initiative, or this thing of this my startup within my bigger tour company, my tour company being Bhutan Tours and Travels, and my startup initiative being Virtual Bhutan. So it purely was, you can call it a reaction to the pandemic, but you can also call it an innovation, because it was when the pandemic hit, physical travel, the whole world was tied to their homes. Like, we couldn't go out anywhere, and I think we were made to sit with ourselves, whether we liked it or not. And I've been thinking of how we can leverage how we can leverage tech for tourism here in Bhutan. And this has been had been in my mind for some time, even before the pandemic happened. And voila, the pandemic happened. Then it kind of helped me crystallize, okay, VR can be VR, a tech innovation that can be applied to tourism sector. So these are, in terms of like within a tourism sector as well, when everyone's doing something similar to you, how can we kind of keep innovating and pushing the boundary and pushing the envelope? So for me, when the pandemic happened, my company, like everyone else's, went through a tough time, still going through a tough time. But for me, I was like, okay, how can I pivot? How can I pivot to address this unusual time that the whole world is facing? We're all in it together. It's a shared human experience. Doesn't matter whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether whatever, it's everyone is facing the same thing. So Virtual Bhutan purely started out of that, my own kind of started out of that compulsion for me to kind of innovate and see, okay, how do I still stay relevant in this tourism space and in this impact journey space? And how it's going, baby steps. It is baby steps, because as far as I know, I'm the only one who's doing virtual tourism in the sense of how I want it to grow in the future. And in terms of putting out products there and getting clients, is still a challenge, because given the pandemic, I cannot expect people to work for me for free with the hope that something will come into fruition later, especially in these pandemic times. Everyone's having a lot of economic hardship. So for me right now, it's I'm still working with I'm at, if you think of it, the pyramid, I'm at the base of the pyramid in terms of my journey. And I am working with a group of young people who are tech savvy, who are software engineers, who are digital marketeer, and who don't necessarily have had past experience in VR, because no one's really done VR in Bhutan, but who has the competence, who has the passion, who has the skills, who has the right kind of mindset, who are thinking along the same line. And I've been lucky that, number one, this project was selected as a sustainable East West Center Innovation Fellow thing. It gives me the platform, it gives me the space to kind of introspect and think about how do I want to design, given the whole theory of change, the monitoring, evaluation, and learning log frames that we have had to work on. So it kind of has compelled me to stop and think and design these essential guiding documents, so to speak. And it will obviously be a living document as we move forward. But I've also been lucky that, given my work in the nonprofit sector, and I work as a consultant, that's my other manifestation, that I managed to, work with this environmental nonprofit called Bhutan Ecological Society, where they were looking specifically to work with this community-based tourism group that they've been working with for some years. And this community-based tourism group's livelihood purely depends on tourism. And they're based in southern rural part of Bhutan in a national park. And because of the pandemic, their livelihood has been, it's been negatively impacted. So they were looking at how they can work with them so that they can kind of bring back some form of livelihood or some form of income flow for their community, given what they are in terms of a community-based tourism. So that's how I'm working with them now, with this nonprofit and this community-based tourism group in southern Bhutan, to create virtual experiences. So if people can't come to them, they can come to the people, or they can provide the experience to people. So that's so I've been lucky that those opportunities have come about, and that has given me the kind of the playing field, or this playing ground to start to get something going.
Great. Actually, Marina from Brazil, one of your co-fellows, and also Fur from the Philippines, they both asked the question, and it's also on my mind. How can we imagine that the virtual experience will be like? How will you experience that with the travelers who try to do that virtually? Because on your website, right now you're promoting like face-to-face experiences that are very customized, but how will that look like for a VR client of yours?
Yeah, so that is a challenge that we courageously face on to take on, because I think in some ways VR actually can be more immersive, can be more customized. The only thing is getting it to the right audience who would like to have such experiences, right? So for us, and I'll get to that a little later, but to begin with, for us, when we create these VR experiences, or as Virtual Bhutan starts on this journey, is not to replace physical tourism. I think physical tourism is here to stay. When the pandemic opens and the borders open, and we kind of know how to navigate this pandemic or the coronavirus protocols, I think physical tourism or face-to-face tourism is here to stay. The virtual tourism will not replace it. What virtual tourism, or what Virtual Bhutan adds value to, is it gives an option. It gives a choice as to how a traveler or explorer can experience Bhutan, right? Because Bhutan is not a cheap destination; it's an expensive destination. The low volume, high impact policy. How does it translate? What does it mean? It means that every visitor who comes to Bhutan has to pay a minimum, and this is a minimum daily tariff of $250 per person per day. Yeah. And although it's an all-inclusive price point, so it includes your hotel, your meals, your guide, your transport, and the government taxes, it's still expensive if you compare it to the other countries in the region. And if you come for a 10-day trip for one person, that's 2,500. That doesn't include the airfare that gets to Bhutan. And the airfare and travel to Bhutan is expensive, again, because we just have two airlines, local airlines that fly in and out of the country. We don't have any international flights, airlines that fly directly into Bhutan. So Bhutan is, because of our policy and because of how we have designed it, it is inaccessible in terms of price points, right? Mm-hmm. It is also inaccessible in terms of time commitment, because it takes, if you're coming in from the US or Europe, it takes literally 2 days of air travel to get to Bhutan, another 2 days of air travel to get back to your country. And then, it just adds up, and people can't take that longer time off of their schedule to come and visit Bhutan. And the third inaccessibility, and that's where it's, Bhutan is a mountainous country, and we are, the altitude is high, and some people, due to the physical, where there's the health problems or due to the physical disability, may not necessarily be able to visit Bhutan. So from that perspective, Virtual Bhutan offers an option that makes it inclusive and accessible for every individual, any individual around the world who wants to experience Bhutan can experience Bhutan. Right? And the second value that we bring to the global audience is, now with climate change, I think more and more people are becoming very conscious of their carbon footprint. Though Bhutan is known as the only carbon negative country, to get to the carbon negative country, your carbon footprint is going to be quite high, because, like I said, it takes 2 days of air travel to get to Bhutan. So it gives an option for people who want to reduce the carbon footprint yet experience Bhutan can experience that. So, we create that, and you can just experience Bhutan from the comfort of your home with a VR headset. So I feel like we, even after the pandemic, the virtual Bhutan will still be an option for people to experience Bhutan. And it actually may be the first step for someone to experience Bhutan, which may then translate into them physically coming to Bhutan, right? And even when they come to Bhutan, they may not necessarily be able to visit all parts of the country, because although we are tiny in terms of size, we are about the size of Rhode Island state in the US, so it's very, very tiny. But because we are mountainous, it's the accessibility and the ease of travel. It takes days to get from one end of the country to the other end of the country. So yes, so for virtual Bhutan, I think in terms of tourism, the future of tourism for Bhutan, it's just a choice on the menu of how people would like to experience Bhutan.
And I would think it's also complementing a possible trip for those who can afford and have the physical fitness to come to your country. It could also be extremely educational, especially since you're talking about sustainability, and it's also part of your constitution to be pro-climate. I would think it could be a wonderful platform to use for education, either for those who come in preparation for their trip, or for anyone else who's possibly never coming, right?
Yeah. Yes, Doris, I thank you for pointing that, because in my answering to that question, I completely forgot about that, because Virtual Bhutan, although it started off as a tourist initiative, we see ourselves as providing more than touristic experience. One of the things I do with my travel company, Bhutan Tours and Travels, I work with schools and colleges to design educational study trips or experiences or service learning to Bhutan. And obviously that I target certain schools whose parents are of certain income bracket to be able to afford these kind of experiences as part of the school curriculum. So for Virtual Bhutan, again, we make it possible for students from any school, doesn't matter whether it's private or public, as long as they're interested, we can create this VR experience for educational purposes, for environmental education, to kind of talk about, okay, what is an example of a country that has done very good environmental stewardship, or what is a country where the culture is still a living culture rather than a museum piece, where there is this alternative development philosophy of gross national happiness, right? But beyond education, we also see it as like a well-being, wellness, and spirituality, because I think Bhutan, being a Buddhist country, it lends very nicely to meditative sounds and sights. And now more and more people are using VR for mental health, for calming the stress, for anxiety. So we feel like we can also add value to that, and that's also a potential market for us to work with, because it's a market for an impact in terms of mental health, right? And we also see ourselves as for nature, and it's very similar to education, but for nature, because our ecosystems here are very it is still very intact, in the sense that it's still I can't think of a better term than, say, virgin ecosystem. Like, it's still the indigenous, and there's a lot of things that people can explore in terms of our nature and our wilderness experiences. So we virtual Bhutan, I feel the future is quite exciting, and these all these opportunities that we can cater and create to.
Yeah, that makes it really exciting also for someone like me who couldn't really imagine virtual reality. I want to go see places in person, but you're so right, it can be just opening up a whole new world of education, well-being, and so on. Speaking to the spiritual values that you just mentioned, our fellow Tricia from the Philippines had that question. What aspects of Buddhism are integrated into your program? Can you speak a bit more to that?
Into into virtual Bhutan?
Exactly. Or also beforehand to your Bhutan Tours and Travels, before you went virtual, maybe to both.
Right. I mean, I think Buddhism, although it's called a religion, I would say it's more of a philosophy, because Buddhism, it's not necessarily about prescribing how to do things and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Buddhism is more about empowering yourself and your mind in introspection to make choices, right? There is, in a Buddhist philosophy, we say, if they weren't suffering, you wouldn't know what happiness is. If they weren't death, you wouldn't value life, right? So what you put forth in this universe or in your space will eventually come back to you. So if you put in bad energy will eventually come back to you. If you put in good energy, good intentions, it'll come back to you. So I said my tourism companies, the Bhutan Tours and Travels, and even virtual Bhutan, I see it more from that perspective, from the perspective of doing the best you can and doing good, and trying to lift everybody at the same time to the best extent possible way that you can, and think and aspiring to a higher value, something higher than yourself, than the physical self, right? Something higher, whether it's the vision or whether it's the ambition, but aspiring for something better. So I think in terms of just spirituality and how it has manifested in my doing of things for the tour companies, I think just even from the fact that I've chosen to be an impact company, and how even we handle our design of the experiences and interaction with the clients who come in, as well as with the community partners that we work with, and in terms of environmental stewardship, because in Buddhism, it's just not all lives are important, not only human lives. Is where there's non-human lives, the animal lives, sentient beings, so everyone, and how you pay respect and how you give them dignity. So yes, I think spirituality, in that sense, it may not necessarily be seen as spirituality for someone who does not necessarily come from a Buddhist background. They may see it as good company practices or good company policies, but from a Bhutanese perspective, or for me at least, I shouldn't speak for all the Bhutanese, but for me at least, it comes from that place of Buddhist values and Buddhist spirituality. Yes.
Beautiful. Can you give us some examples where, I would say, prior to the pandemic, when you still did tours and brought people to your beautiful national parks, did you have any examples to share where you feel like you had some proof that you're really doing the right thing because of the feedback you got from your travelers, or just how it felt? Did you
Yeah.
see that you're really making impact?
Yeah. Yes. So two scenarios, right? So the first scenario is when the visitor, him or herself, is in Bhutan and go to one of these interactions or this community visit, you see the impact right away because they move to tears. Some of them just like all fine this minute, and the next minute they're like sobbing. And I'm like, "Are you sad?" They're like, "No, it's just something is in the air." I can't help myself. And like it kind of gives me goosebump myself as well, because for someone who is being here and we kind of see this and we think, we take it for granted, in terms of all these different experiences and how unique it is. But for a visitor who comes from a very different external environment to come here and to experience that and to have this kind of quote unquote authentic experiences that they experience, for someone to be moved to tears, not because of sadness, but because they can't help themselves, I think is a very powerful thing, because I mean, what else? Why else? Or what else can you do to make someone cry for happiness, right? You can't engineer that physically. It's very emotional. It's a very spiritual thing that you're moved to do, you're moved to express that feeling. So a lot of my clients who come, I've seen that time and again, and such things have happened consistently across all the trips that I've done with my clients. And the second scenario is after they leave, right? After they leave Bhutan, how they stay connected. And I would say from my clients, all the people who come to Bhutan, about 80% of them, I become very good friends. And, they come back again for different experiences. And they always, and very unexpectedly, they send me emails and WhatsApp messages like, "Oh, today I went here and it was a very tough thing for me, but I thought of my time in Bhutan and I thought of the conversation we had. I thought of this interaction I had with this woman in this thing, and it made me realize, and it made me kind of evaluate or reposition myself as to how I view that incident or that situation." And I've also had people, clients who come from very wealthy backgrounds, but this like a prayer bead, very not, I mean, to their standards is not expensive, it's a fairly cheap prayer bead, but then they wear it all the time because they feel like that brings them energy. And they wear those prayer beads with their, I don't know, their Tiffany bangles or their whatever, whatever jewelry it is. But it sits on their arm, it sits around their neck, and they wear it all the time. And just recently, I had one of my clients, she just messaged me and we were talking, and she sent a photo of her on one of the trips that she did with the thing. And in that photo, I could still see those prayer beads on her arms, so it stays with them, whether it's a physical manifestation of something they take with them. And is in terms of just the price value, is not expensive, but in terms of what it means for them at an individual level, it's priceless.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that also gave me some goosebumps just hearing that story. I'm really curious, Tinley, do you ever debate, should we enable more people, not just a wealthier group of people, to have that feeling or that experience? I know it's set by your tourism board who wants to follow that strategy, right? Lower levels of travelers, but higher quality. But do you ever debate, should we give more people, not just the wealthiest group, access to that wonderful experience that you just described?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I debate it all the time because, I have people who I know who are just wonderful beings and who have such good intentions and the reasons why they want to visit Bhutan, but because of the cost restrictions they cannot. And I have this debate, and sometimes I almost feel I'm put in these situations where I feel very guilty to even say, once they get into the nitty gritty of how to visit Bhutan, I almost feel guilty to even say, okay, you just can't fly into Bhutan like you would fly into Nepal or you would fly into India. I was like, you
Mm-hmm.
have to do all of this, and these are the costs, and this and this. So it's one of those um, debates that I constantly have within myself, within me, and within people who I know quite well. We have this debate, and it's one of those things where I don't have an answer for it. And the best I can do is just to roll with it and just to try and help and create, to the extent possible, um, for them to experience Bhutan. And I hopefully, although physical visit is not the same as a virtual visit, but I'm hoping that could be, and that actually is one of the reasons why I feel like virtual Bhutan can also be inclusive in that way. But it's one of those things where I know it's it seems unfair from the client's perspective, or from people who want to visit Bhutan, that, oh my gosh, you're being very discriminatory towards people of certain income brackets, versus you only want to cater to the wealthy ones. But people who visit Bhutan are not necessarily wealthy. Of course, they've saved up to come and visit Bhutan. And our average age for visitors who've come to Bhutan are people who, like, in their 50s, 40s, 60s, so retirees who now have saved enough money and have enough time to come and visit. So it is a bucket list destination where people kind of save up and visit Bhutan. But your question is, it's a very relevant question, and is a question where, depending on whose perspective you look at it, can sound good or can sound unreasonable.
But I mean, like you mentioned, the strategy is working for Bhutan and its sustainability and how you're keeping your ecosystem healthy. It was also a question by one of our fellows from the Philippines, Christina. She was asking, what outcomes and impacts have you attained in sustainable tourism in Bhutan with the strategies that you're using? Can you share a little bit more why you're using the strategy of high quality travelers, lower volumes?
Sure. So it has made a huge impact in terms of just the country, right? Because tourism, like I said, is one of the income earner for the country, and how that has contributed in terms of impact for Bhutan is, number one, our education is free. So all of that money goes, that money along with income that we earn from the other big sector, which is hydropower, all of that goes towards funding a free education system for Bhutan. It goes towards funding free healthcare for Bhutan, right? It goes towards funding and upkeep of national parks in Bhutan. It goes towards making sure our environment and our forest is well maintained. So, all that income earned from low volume, high impact, or our pricing point, or our pricing structure of tourism, it all has gone to show this kind of impact for Bhutan in terms of our education, our healthcare, our environmental stewardship. And Bhutan, our government, we can trace the money, so it doesn't go into this oblivion of what it is. It just doesn't go into thin air. The money goes to the central, to the Ministry of Finance, which then goes into all these different buckets that is needed for. So even as a Bhutanese citizen, I can confidently say that I've benefited from this, the impact. I'm born and raised in Bhutan, gotten free education. I still enjoy free healthcare. I can, if I have a headache, I go to the hospital. And it doesn't, whether you're a citizen or not, as long as you live in Bhutan, even if you're a foreigner working in Bhutan, even if you're a tourist in Bhutan, you go to the hospital, it's free. So one of those, when you are talking about these Buddhist values and how it's impacted. Like I've had a few tourists who, when they came to Bhutan, they've had minor accidents, like they either slipped and broke the ankle or sprained the ankle, or they've had some stomach issues. And they're just amazed at how they go to the hospital, in any hospital, and they get given very good care, taken care of very well, and not even asked to pay anything, So it goes towards all of that, and you can see the impact in just how our public health education system is.
And you mentioned earlier, Thinley, that Bhutan is carbon negative. Can you explain to us a bit more what that means and how you?
So what that means is that thanks to our forest, our country is about currently 72% forest cover. And our constitution mandates that at a very minimum, it should remain 60% forest cover for all times to come. So thanks to our forests, that we are absorbing or sinking more carbon dioxide than we are emitting. So if you add up all the carbon emissions that we produce from our businesses, from our transportation, from our lifestyle, from our industries, you add all of that up, it's still less than how much our forest sinks, or how much our forest removes oxygen from the air. So when you do the math, then we have a big carbon sink amount for Bhutan. Therefore, we are a carbon negative country.
Interesting. And do you see? You said it's 60% of forests need to stay remaining for all times coming. But do you see a change in your lifestyle of your citizens possibly threading that carbon negativity?
Well, yeah. One of the other things I do is I work, like I said, I am quite active in the consulting and in the climate change space. And it's a conversation that we have and that I constantly point out, is that we are lucky that we have arrived how we have arrived, and we're lucky that we have the forest inherited as it is, and we're lucky we have the leadership that we have. But Bhutan transitioned and came from a very different time period where we were pretty much a hermit country, right? But now the internet is here. The younger populations, the younger generation, how they grew up is very different from even how I grew up, which is very different from how my parents grew up. And even just our lifestyle has evolved over the years, and how we consume things, how we live, how we can't deal with certain conveniences of life, and how life has become more efficient in terms of just the different things we use. So yes, definitely the lifestyles are changing. And that's something that we, in my work in the climate space, that I constantly post, because I'm like, I have nothing to say again. I have nothing to say for how we have conserved or how we do conservation work. I think we do a stellar job in terms of conservation work. But now we have to start looking at ourselves as individuals of how we can play a role in mitigating or adapting to climate change, and the choices we make, and also in terms of like the waste we produce, because with the lifestyle that we have right now, it's producing a lot of waste. And there are studies that shows that if we don't change, if Bhutanese people don't change how we live, and we live status quo, in 30 years time, we will lose our carbon negative status. So it's not that people, our country is not talking about it. It's not that people are not discussing this. I think we are definitely doing that. And I think there's a lot of consciousness, especially now, I would say more and more consciousness amongst the younger generation. Just because climate change has now become such a generational thing that in this decade, if you don't do anything, what happens in the future is the younger generations who has to face that. So it's definitely a very a very poignant and very current debate that is happening. But I think, lifestyles and culture is not stagnant. It always evolves. And with modernization and technological innovation and advancement, there is nothing wrong in enjoying that and nothing wrong in progressing with it. But I think the answer also lies in that, in terms of how we develop, what kind of technological innovations we bring on, and how we integrate that as part of our daily lifestyle and our future, how we consume. But yeah, your question on Bhutan, even if we have 60% forest cover for all times to come, as mandated by our constitution, if we are not conscious and if we are not careful as to how we design a lifestyle and the choices we make and the policy we make moving forward, that doesn't guarantee a carbon negative status. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But our target should be carbon negative, but we should never go below carbon neutral.
Yeah. And Thinley, do you see yourself with the VR that you're now expanding to, right? Mm-hmm. Could you use that tool also for your people? Because right now you're focusing a lot on the outsiders who want to visit and experience Bhutan. But speaking to exactly that change of our own lifestyles, I see like a possibility, right? Using VR for your own people and younger generations to learn about the impacts that they're having.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our conversation has just been that we were talking more on tourism and inbound tourism, but the VR virtual Bhutan, I see it for our students as well, especially for educational purposes. I think there's a lot of potential there, not only for them to see places, because I think the places in Bhutan, how every Bhutanese experience is not necessarily unique to an individual per se, the experience, but what's innovation or what is aha for our students is the technology of it, right? It's the tech part rather than the experience part.
Yeah.
And I think there is a huge component of education and stimulation there. And right now, in if I give you an example of how I'm functioning, I said to you earlier, we're at the base of the pyramid. Like when I started Virtual Bhutan and I started filming for this consultancy that we got with this nonprofit, even to get the equipments to Bhutan and the pandemic, to begin with, to get things into Bhutan, it takes a little longer just because of our landlocked and how everything has to come through India or through other places. But because of the pandemic, even for us to get our cameras, the 360, we use a 360 Insta camera. It took us 4 months to get that camera, right? Mm-hmm. And now we have the camera. We also ordered a VR headset because we don't have it available easily in the market here. The headset is still stuck in India. And this is like, I don't know, 8 months into it now. So we had to actually, me and my team, we downloaded the VR headset blueprint and we pretty much cut it out from a cardboard paper and made that and pretty much put a phone on it and kind of see what it is like. So I am functioning from that resource perspective, from that resource landscape. I put that up on my social media and one of my friends saw it and then he called me and he said, I have a VR headset that my daughter is not using anymore. I can donate it to you. So, I said, oh, thank you very much. I would gladly take it. So we have that headset, which we use, and it's just one headset. So we have to for people to actually see what a VR is. Even when we're working with this community-based tourism group, for them it's like, what's a VR? For them, it's like the video that you see on YouTube or on any platform on the internet. But I'm like, no, VR is immersive. So you kind of put it on, you kind of turn around, you can see everything, right? Mm-hmm. So why I gave you that example is that yes, the education aspect is really huge in Bhutan, but even we who are doing this, we even don't have the equipments and the necessary resources. So for us to, first of all, even before we can begin to like work with the schools, we need to figure out how we can get these equipments into schools and into kids' hands that they can experience this tech.
Yeah, that makes sense. So huge vision and many, many baby steps, as you mentioned it, to get there. But I love how you already so inspired by it and so motivated. So I really look forward to seeing an end product. I don't know when, but hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where I sometimes almost feel a little like what's the word? All talk no show kind of a thing, because I've been because of this and people picking it up, I've been on all these things, and I'm always telling them, I said, yes, this is a vision, but we are still at the base of the pyramid. We still face very practical issues like getting equipments and getting stuff before we can actually put out a lot of these quality experiences out there. And equipment is one thing and talent is another. We just don't have the right kind of talent who can kind of the the starting point of a VR experience, but then working on it better for digital engagement or for more high quality experience. So we just, and for that we need international collaboration in terms of the talent, and that's fine, and that's one of the reasons I'm quite eager to, because through that collaboration, local talent can be developed as well. So then it's the knowledge is transferred over. But yeah, the goals are huge. But I always say, please, please don't expect anything great, and I don't want to be, be like, oh, you're all talk, no show kind of a thing, because it's what we say, like taking a leap of faith, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a high mountain to climb, but you got to start somewhere. And I'm grateful for you trying and going that route, so we can also from you. Lastly, Thinley, could you just quickly speak to the development goals, the sustainable development goals that you're trying to support with this initiative?
Yeah. So two SDGs that we are our work contributes to, or working to contribute to, is the SDG 13 climate action. I think the fact that we are giving a carbon or a carbon conscious experience for people to consume, or not consume, so experience Bhutan by reducing the carbon footprint and reducing the carbon emissions going into the air. I think that contributes towards our SDG 13 climate action, but also it contributes towards SDG through climate literacy or through climate education as to what Bhutan has done and what can be done and what is the benefits of nature and how it has helped our culture, our lifestyle, and how it has helped Bhutan put ourselves on the map in the world. So there's also that narrative storytelling aspect to climate action, and not necessarily very calculating carbon this and carbon that, but the whole lifestyle and story around that. So we believe we contribute towards SDG 13 in that. And we also, the second SDG we work towards is SDG 17, which is Partnership for Global Action. Because I think the work that we do, actually, even in the work that we do in tourism, I see myself more as the facilitator, the storyteller, the bridge. Because I think there are a lot of initiatives happening in Bhutan, and to kind of create that collaboration and create that partnership through tourism, because certain people come in, all kinds of people come in, right, into Bhutan, but they don't necessarily come in with their professional hat, or they come in just as an individual who's interested in visiting Bhutan. But then they come and see here and be able to create these experiences and make those connections. Then it sparks off something, that a collaboration. It sparks off partnerships. It sparks off partnerships and trust. So we believe, and even with VR, is a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of partnership we have to do, whether it's at the back end in terms of us working with the community groups and the local villages to create these experiences, or whether it's in the front end when we're working with different partners in the VR space, whether it's for tech, whether it's for wellness, whether it's for education, whether it's for tourism. So all of it is driven by collaboration and partnerships. So SDG 17.
Thank you. Thinley, lastly, would you share with us how you define breaking silos, or what advice would you give someone else who's trying to also break silos to move forward in sustainable development in their communities?
Right. How we break silos, I think it starts with yourself individually. It starts with the courage. It starts with moral leadership. It starts with not preempting yourself, but just going with it. If you believe in the process and you believe in yourself and you believe in the cause, you can. Don't let systems dictate you if the systems are restrictive towards that kind of collaboration, and function from within ecosystem perspective. So even the way I describe myself, I always say I'm a social entrepreneur and a consultant that functions within the ecosystem portfolio of work that does work in blah, 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 blah. So I think even how you portray and put yourself out there, that you remain relevant. Of course, you have to come with the competence, you have to come with the skill sets, and you have to come with the mindset and the vision. So you got to be able to do the work if you're asked. But always articulate and project yourself in the way that you're not confined, within a certain sector or within a certain industry. And how I've able to break these silos is, I've been like that from when I started my career. I think even before I realized I was an entrepreneur, I think I was an entrepreneur with that kind of mindset, because I didn't confine myself. I started off with the UN, then I went and started my own nonprofit organization, then I went and started my own business. Now I do consulting on policy level, and I've done work in social enterprises. I work with different business partners around the world. So I cut across sectors, and I don't let sectors define what I do, but rather I'm defined by what the issue is. And many times, and all the time, I should say, not many times, all the time, to solve an issue or solve a problem is not one sector, is not one person. It is a collective of everything together. So
that's very well said. And I think a wonderful closing statement. It takes a lot of people to solve an issue. And thank you, Thinley, for all the amazing work that you're doing. It's been extremely inspiring to me, and I hope also to our listeners. If you want to learn more about Thinley's project, about Bhutan Tours and Travels, please find the information in the description box below. Also, if you like this interview, feel free to share it with your network, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more interviews coming up. That's all for me today. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Thinley, for being on the show, and we hope to see you all soon again. Stay tuned.